Hi everyone. My name is Katie Cromit. I'm a certified Zentangle teacher, and today I'm doing something really new for me and fun, which is to demonstrate on video how to do a Zentangle tile. So I've done this video, it's sped up a little bit. My fingers in real life are not moving as fast as they are on this video, but I thought it was a neat way to show how easy, simple, step by step, and relatively quickly it is to create a really cool piece of art that has no expectation of what it's going to look like in the end. I started this out in the traditional way of doing Zentangle where there was no plan. It's truly just kind of going with the flow, picking out the patterns, which are called tangles, picking those out before, and just kind of going with it. Even when I make a little mistake here in this tangle that I'm doing right now, it's called Huggins, and I made a tiny bit of an oops. And maybe you noticed it, and maybe you didn't, but you know, it's not the end of the world. It's not the failure of this tile, so I kept going with it. So I'm getting to the end of drawing Huggins, and now I started searching for the next tangle that I was going to draw, which ended up being the tangle called Enzeppel, which was created by the founders of Zentangle. And Enzeppel is a grid tangle that takes sort of an organic form at the end. So it has a really neat ending result, what it looks like. I'm always remembering to turn my tile just to make it easier to draw the lines and to make it nice and comfortable on my hand as well. The next part of Enzeppel is to fill in those triangle shapes with a kind of like a little orby type shape. I'm tracing around the straight lines, and when I get to the corners, I take a little U-turn. Describe it as sort of fitting in a balloon into a gridded space. So you're stuffing this orby type organic shape into a very geometric shape. The most important part of Zentangle is to relax and to let go of your expectations. That is a key for relaxation right there, is to let go of your expectations about what this moment should be about. It doesn't have to look like anything. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's purely for the pleasure of putting that ink down on this beautiful piece of paper. This is those gorgeous watercolor, cotton watercolor paper that these tiles are made out of. So after I filled in the middle parts of Enzeppel, I decided to go back to Huggins and add in kind of a little triangular thing into the middles of each one of the Huggins spaces to give it more interest. So I started thinking about what the next tangle was that I was going to do. I had a couple ideas and just took a moment to stop and think about what the next one was going to be. And then I realized I'm moving my tile outside of really great view for the camera, which I'll know better next time of how to do that so that it doesn't get in the way of viewing. So it looks like I finally got the hint and moved that tile up so that the camera could actually see it, so you could see what I'm doing here on my tile. But live and learn. So now I'm doing the tangle called Noom, Noom, which Zentangle headquarters created, and it's a really neat tangle because the end result looks somewhat complicated, or you'd look at it and be sort of unsure about how to start it, but it's really made up of S shapes, and you're just doing some S shapes and a couple maybe C shapes or like a wave, and just doing step by step. And there you've got the tangle, which makes a great border called Noom. And I'm auraing around the outside of it now. It just sort of gives it a, I don't know, when in doubt, aura. That's what is said. That's what they say. So now I'm thinking also again about what's next. I have a little box of small tiles, and on each one of them I have done just one tangle so that it's a reference box. It's a little box that I can carry around with me when I want to do a Zentangle tile. And if I don't know what to do next, I just sort through the box, and I just pick a couple tiles, and there we go, the decision's made for me. So I decided that I wanted to use the aura of Noom and start up with a tangle called Shattuck. So I wanted to take the aura and just draw it into these little areas that make up Shattuck. So I finish up Shattuck and add a tangle that's made up of circles, or as we call them in Zentangle, orbs. And that tangle is called Tipple. So I added that into the space just very quickly. So again, I'm sorry that I keep dragging that tile outside of the view of the camera. Now I'm doing a tangle called Dandy by another certified Zentangle teacher whose name is Sandhya Mann, and I really hope I pronounced that right. I love this tangle because it's organic, it's free, it looks like the dried dandelions that I remember picking when I was a kid and blowing, and all of those really beautiful puffy dandelion seeds would just fly in the air, and then make other new dandelions come up in the yard. But I realized too that it's hard to see what I'm drawing because of that pen that's in the way. Again, I'm really just learning, and it's an experiment for me. So now the magic begins. The magic is in the shading. It's amazing how just adding a tiny bit of graphite in areas along the edges. I always add the shading in kind of the contour areas to lift up the pattern and show some dimension and depth. The shading in Zentangle is not your typical, it doesn't have to be your typical shading. You don't need to go to art school to know how to shade a Zentangle tile. You just add it kind of where you feel like putting it. The rule of thumb is, if you don't know where to shade, I always go around the contours. I go around the edges. I go around where it looks like there might be one thing, one object lying on top of another, and adding graphite to enhance that depth and dimension. And after I lay some graphite down there, I smudge it with this little smudging tool that has a beautiful French name called a tortillon. Looks like tortillon. So I love adding the shading. It's really amazing. It never ceases to amaze me of how much depth and dimension the graphite adds to the black and white simple design. Sometimes I'll tend to be heavy-handed with that graphite, but you really don't have to be heavy-handed. You just add a tiny bit. A little bit goes a long way. Sometimes I don't even use the pencil. I just use the graphite that's left over on the tortillon to add some shading, which I did back when I shaded Dandy. So I'm finishing up this tile by finalizing the shading of Shattuck, doing a little bit just in Noom too, just with the tortillon. Just finishing it up, those finishing touches. Like I said, a little bit goes a long way. Looks like I'm adding a little bit more graphite here. Just kind of touching up the areas. That little space that looks like there's a little nook or a cranny, nook and cranny down there. So the next step is to just look at your tile and pick it up and turn it around and admire it. And then I add my initials at the bottom and turn it around and sign it. Put the date on there, and there's a little space for a tiny bit of journaling. Just added a little bit of a note where I was on that day. And there you go. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.